Think about your family for a minute. Who is the de facto leader? That is, who does everyone go to for the plan? Who's the joker or class clown of the family? The nurturer. These same roles play out in the workplace. Sometimes we embody these roles formally, like when we are a titled leader. But generally speaking, we ebb and flow between the roles throughout our day as we interact with others to, get our work done. While some of these roles are productive and others are helpful to group functioning, some can detract or damage employee well-being and group health. Today, we're going to look at group roles, consider how they impact us individually, and how they impact our team. Hello, and welcome to The Communicative Leader, hosted by me, Dr. Leah O'Million Hodges. My friends call me Dr. O. I'm a professor of communication and a leadership communication expert. On The Communicative Leader, we're working to make your work life what you want it to be. When we think of organizational roles, we often think of our formal appointments in terms of the job title and the official list of job duties that accompany that role. And having clarity here, this is essential for our ability to be successful, to do what we were hired to do, right? To make sure we're working alongside peers rather than competing with them or replicating what they're done and avoiding to step on toes. But it's also important to consider the informal roles we engage in and the ways that we interact with others. Why? Because some of these informal roles, they're really helpful. They help us achieve our goals, meet deadlines, facilitate participation, decision-making. They're pretty awesome, right? Same with some of those. They can be relational in nature. These roles can help us to create trusting, supportive relationships. But what about the roles that take away from a group or a team? Think about a conversation monopolizer, or those that are actually toxic, such as a central negative or someone who blocks the progress of a group or of a person. Today, we're going to look at these roles and consider them within the context of a group or team. Remember, our colleagues, these are non-chosen relationships, those that we end up in, often for an indefinite period, and we're expected to work in collaboration with. So we're going to start by thinking about the work group as a system. And then we're going to look at some of these common roles. And we're going to end by considering the many, many advantages of having really strong relationships in the team. But of course, we've got to look at some of the potential disadvantages too. So I want to start by thinking about team relationships. One way that's common in research literature is through team member exchange or TMX. Yeah, more theory, but this one is an important one and a really easy one to grasp. Your team member exchange or TMX, it's an incredibly complex idea. Why? It is a larger relationship that encompasses all of the individual dyadic relationships. What? It accounts for the sum of all workgroup relationships? Yeah, you got it. All of the individual leader-member couplings and the peer dyadic relationships too. So what I really love about TMX is it shows the benefit of a collection of functionally moderate to high quality workplace relationships. Team functioning tends to be really great then. It is a nice and safe place to share ideas, to dialogue, to discuss, and to work. But TMX also shows the outcome of a handful of low-quality relationships, whether these are a couple of leader-member relationships that are contentious or some peer relationships that are counterproductive. When we come together as a unit, those cracks impact how it feels in that shared space. It impacts our ability to collaborate well. If we make this really simple, the way we feel in our work group, if we feel seen and validated and appreciated, it impacts the quality of the work that we produce. Our intention to stay in that role in our work group, and even our overall well-being as a person. What else has this area of research shown us? That if we feel like we're part of the group, we're more likely to contribute in a unique way, right? Only the ways that we can do, only what we bring to the table, and we're more likely to engage in helping behaviors. And this makes sense, right, my friends? When we feel like we're part of the group, we exert more effort to help the group to be successful. So we're going to dive into the advantages and, again, some potential drawbacks of these relationships after we look at the work group as a system and then at these different collection of group roles. So let's think about a system approach. I want you to think about the imagery of a body. A collection of interdependent systems. This has long been used as a way to consider organizational functioning. We're going to think about it today in terms of our leader member, our peer, and our team relationships working together in concert or maybe in opposition, because we know, unfortunately, that happens. So I want you to think about your body, your physical health. You tend to be at your best when everything is working and working well together. When we have a cold and our immune system is working overtime, we tend to feel tired or groggy, just not our best. Same goes for our work group functioning. We're best when our leader, member, our peer, and our team relationships are all in good health. When we use systems theory or this body metaphor to think about work group health, the importance of communication, again, yes, I know I love it, it is underscored. Not only is communication the leader's primary means to influence and motivate members, but it's the vehicle. It is the same tool that they use to develop relationships, navigate conflict, and collaborate to achieve work demands. So overlooking the importance of communication can quickly lead to deteriorating relationships, which in turn, right, then we have negative impacts to productivity, likely retention issues. We're not going to see as many helping behaviors, and certainly if it doesn't feel like a safe place to work, likely to see fewer creative and innovative ideas. Some earlier work that my friend and colleague Jen Patesa completed with another friend and colleague of ours, Deirdre Zarelli, we thought about how to reframe how we think about the collection of these work group relationships. Again, the ones that we share with our leader, our peers, and the team as a whole. We use the imagery of a TP to argue that while leader, member, and team associations, certainly these are standalone relationships, that they are most potent and most effective when they are united like the top of a TP. Earlier ways that individuals used to look at these was looking at points of a triangle. And this implicitly suggests that these relationships develop and they function in isolation. But what we're saying is these are interconnected. These are communicative. These need to be studied and understood in concert because that's what happens in work groups. So if we shift our focus from the top of to the top of a TP, where we're looking at the importance of these relationships, it also shows us this three-dimensional view is more comprehensive, but more reflective of how these relationships interact and play out in a workplace. With systems theory, it's not only helpful when we're thinking about the potential strength of, again, those leader, peer, and team relationships, but it can also show us what happens when relationships or employee behaviors detract from optimal team functioning. What's going to make for a fuller and juicier discussion of systems theory? Well, we're going to look at these specific roles that we play a lot. Why? Because if we're looking at these common roles that we all tend to ebb and flow throughout, then we can see the very positive ways in which they can help our team and those ways that are, well, less than positive. So first, let's consider some of the ways that we might engage, communicate in order to help our team accomplish tasks, right? So these roles, they might help us with decision-making, project management, forecasting, annual reviews. Essentially, these task roles we're going to talk about, it is all about getting stuff done. So one, we're going to start with the leader. And we've talked about this before, friends. This does not have to mean a formal authority position with a specific title. But a leader, it might be team members who have expertise and experience in certain areas to set an aligned vision or to help the group as a whole or little units within the group achieve a project goal. This role lets employees showcase their unique skills and knowledge, and certainly it can be formal. Maybe you're a project leader, for example, or it can be someone who raises their hand in a meeting to help the team better understand a process or area of work that they specialize in. Remember, we are leading with or without a title, and in this case, we all enact this role from time to time. Another task role that tends to be an especially important one is the expediter. This is the person or people who are really mindful of time and deadlines and of goals. Our expediter keeps our group focused, right? So whether that is in a meeting or whether that is working to achieve a deadline. If you're listening and thinking, we need one of those, we need an expediter, this can be you. Anyone can fulfill this role. What does it look like? It can be formal. So each meeting, we have an expediter appointed on the agenda. It can include planning ahead so we know how much of our meeting time is allocated to each part of the discussion. Or we can do this less formally as well, where someone minds the clock and helps the discussion to stay focused rather. Maybe something like, okay, taken together, what I hear is A, B, C, and D. Is that fair to say? Okay, yes. If so, then let's use our last 20 minutes to flesh out part E. Small things like this can really help a group to stay focused and to achieve those goals, which in turn helps to build stronger feelings of community. Our third task-based role, the information seeker. Again, another essential one. This role serves to ask questions, seek opinions, and look for clarification regarding group decisions. Appointing someone to serve as an information seeker, it can prevent groupthink and help the team to consider potential unintended consequences. This might sound familiar to some of you, similar to the role of devil's advocate. You know that the devil's advocate is a role designed to help groups consider potential consequences or unforeseen outcomes. And it is an important part of decision-making process and can help guard against groupthink. But the devil's advocate can also make for an unpopular colleague. Why? This person's job is to argue, to poke holes in arguments, to dissent. While the information seeker is similar, it is a more positive take. The information seeker, again, exactly what the name implies. Someone who's looking to establish a treasure trove of information, whether this is background or to learn of team members' preferences and opinions, to remove ambiguity. They're helping the team prepare to make a thoughtful decision via a thoughtful discussion, right? I have two more task-focused roles I want us to consider. Number 4, the gatekeeper. This one on the onset, I think it sounds a bit ominous, and it's not. So let's dive into it. So our gatekeeper, they're just managing the flow of discussion. So we're making sure that everyone contributes, that everyone is participating, and that there's no one or two dominant voices. Have you heard of the term no hogs and no logs? Well, this is part of what the gatekeeper manages, helping to make sure that no one is hogging the conversation, and there are also no logs, just sitting there and not participating. I always coach formal leaders to establish meeting guidelines for their teams. It should be collaborative in nature, maybe on a jam board where everyone adds ideas, or on a whiteboard, or just discussed in a meeting. A meeting about meetings. Okay, how meta, right? But if we discuss ahead of time, no dominating conversation and no social loafing or just sitting there without contributing, that can really help. Also, adding guidelines like no interrupting, taking turns, mindful of time, beginning and ending on time, all contribute to establishing those positive norms. What else? If someone is dominating the conversation, The gatekeeper can say something like, "Wow, thanks, Philip, for that response. We know where you stand. Now we need to hear from Jill." Also, formal leaders or those who are running the meeting should set expectations at the start. Something like, "Hi all, thanks for joining me today to talk about Project X. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts so we can dive into this opportunity. My goal for today's meeting is to hear from each of you and then to end our meeting with next steps. But in order to do this, we need to take turns sharing our ideas, and it also means that we need to be focused and fairly succinct. I might jump in for the sake of time, but I'm going to follow up with you after the meeting to make sure I fully understand your perspective." So we recognize there are some clear expectations ahead of time. We recognize that if someone feels they haven't been able to share all of their thoughts, that the leader will circle back in order to hear them, right? Our final task role, the recorder, this is a pretty common one, right? This is the way that we see in terms of an employee taking meeting minutes, right? Or taking notes. It might be a role that we rotate through. It might be a formal appointment, maybe a secretary of the group, or completed by an administrative assistant. Why is this important? Someone serving as a recorder during informal or ad hoc meetings can help preserve discussions and activities. In the moment, we think, yes, of course I'm going to remember this. My friends, I do not remember what I ate for dinner last night. And guess what? I even cooked it, and I still don't remember at this moment. Having meeting minutes can help to jog our memories, and it's really nice to provide context for why decisions were made, and it can even give new employees access to background information if they need it. So we just looked at 5 common task-related roles, meaning these informal roles help us to gather information we need, consider alternatives, engage members, and tease out possible consequences. The leader, the expediter, the information seeker, our gatekeeper, and the recorder. Whether your team appoints people formally for these roles or you ebb and flow through them, they tend to lead to more effective and positive work-based outcomes. Another essential set of roles that we tend to, again, ebb and flow throughout are relational in nature. We are thinking about building community, navigating conflict, and upping our team cohesion. These roles can help anytime, not just during meetings, as many of the task-related roles do. Again, these roles can be enacted by any member, and oftentimes groups and teams have several members who really lean into many of these roles we're going to discuss. So first, our supporter. Enactment of this role, a lot of times it aligns with someone's personality and their typical communication behaviors. An employee serving as a supporter might do so by working to develop these strong interpersonal connections in the work group. They might communicate in a really thoughtful, other-oriented way. The supporter might be there to encourage a peer during a trying project or just to provide some emotional support and some recognition. You might realize that you're a supporter to certain peers and not others, or you may hear this role and think of a person on your team who embodies this for the group as a whole. At the end of the day, having access to extra social support is key. It can help us to weather criticism, an especially challenging project, or when our personal life is asking more of us. Another important relational role, the tension releaser. Generally, people in this role have been told for a long time that they're naturally funny and witty. The tension releaser has a finger on the pulse of the work group, right? So when they're engaging in humor, they have a really good idea of what those around them are going to respond to and are doing so in a positive way, in a way that encourages fellowship and connection. I find myself smiling right now and thinking of my cousin Steven, life of the party, genuinely kind, excellent at reading the room and communicating in inclusive and warm ways. Next, we have the harmonizer. This is also another incredibly adept communicator. Harmonizer can help peers effectively navigate conflict and, really importantly, interpersonal differences. This is huge, especially on teams that make large-scale decisions or have lots of natural diversity in terms of opinions, ages, or stages, or those that have come through some challenging times and could still benefit from a bit of a mediator. Again, the harmonizer is an excellent connector. Our final relational role, the interpreter. I think we're seeing a theme here, but we're seeing that these individuals are very complex and very skilled communicators. Interpreters help to build bridges by mediating intercultural conflict. Organizations can help employees by training to reduce ethnocentrism and increasing employees' awareness of other cultures and value systems. The interpreter role is exceedingly essential considering the increase in multinational corporations and diverse work groups. So these supportive roles highlight pro-social communication behaviors that employees enact, and they help to enhance team functioning. And it might be really optimistic to believe or to hope that these are the only roles that team members enact. But my friends, we have to consider some that are negative as well. So first, we have kind of two sets of negative roles and behaviors that I want us to look at. And the first one is Cragen and colleagues point out in a really excellent open source communication book that I will link below. These first set, they are self-centered communication behaviors. And since they are self-centered, they tend to, at their best, just be a little bit frustrating and detract from the group, but they can also be downright counterproductive and even destructive to groups and teams. So again, some of these negative roles that we see stemming from self-centered communication behaviors are central negative. Often, but not always, the central negative is someone who wanted to lead but was not selected. This person tends to find fault with all leader-initiated ideas and directives and is often the first to challenge a leader's ideas or initiatives. And they might even engage in some coalition building, meaning trying to get others on their side. Again, I know you can't see air quotes, but I'm doing them. This person might not have wanted to be the leader, but again, they often take personal offense to the leader's ideas, and those often brought up by others as well. I don't want us to confuse the central negative with devil's advocate. The devil's advocate should be a role all team members cycle through. The appointed person should consider alternatives and possible consequences and do what an old manager of mine would say, well, let's kick the tires. But the central negative instead, they tend to bring negativity in and out of meetings, and it can become very toxic to workplaces. Another negative role, and again, one that is certainly a self-centered communication behavior, the monopolizer. Oh, all teams have one, don't they? And this can be really hard. Why? Well, when one dominates a conversation for long periods, others tend to check out. We're not listening. We're not engaged. We might be missing quality information. But when we have a monopolizer who is dominating conversations, it often means that others are not speaking up because they can't join the discussion or fear that the monopolizer will speak over them. So our gatekeeper role we talked about above, they're there and designed to keep monopolizers in check. What's another negative role we tend to see in teams? The self-confessor. I even cringed while writing this because, well, this can make things cringy. Yes, academic, scientific term there. I am all for bringing your whole self to work, but there are things that we share with close friends, and there are other things that we share with colleagues. There is a difference, folks. This individual tends to reveal too much personal information to peers, often because they need support, advice, or to alleviate loneliness. Here, the gatekeeper role and/or supporters can help manage our self-confessors. What else do we have that tends to bring in negative and self-centered communication into the workplace? An individual who is the insecure compliment seeker. This is the group member who is constantly seeking continuous feedback, validation, and praise from peers or the manager. This employee needs continual affirmation and validation that they are needed and valued by the group. I don't want to make anyone feel self-conscious about this. We all need feedback and validation. This is just part of basic interpersonal needs. But our insecure compliment seeker, they go above and beyond here in terms of the need. Mentors, if you have an employee who fits this bill, consider setting them up with an official mentor. It can be helpful in individual or team meetings to reserve space for employees to share wins with the group or create space for peer and leader feedback on various projects. Our final negative role that we're going to look at that kind of stems from engaging in self-centered communication, the joker. So this is not the same as the tension reliever, and we're going to dive into why. So unlike the tension reliever who uses humor effectively and thoughtfully, the joker can be childish and just distracting. The joker might play pranks or tell jokes that take away from team functioning and employee well-being. So where the tension reliever uses inclusive, work-appropriate humor, a lot of times the joker just misses the mark or engages in humor that is dated, exclusive, or again, otherwise harmful to individuals or groups. Unfortunately, I have a former colleague who comes to mind when I think about this. Well, I firmly believe his intentions were good. He once brought a giant stick into the office on St. Patrick's Day, and he called it his shillelagh. And then he inadvertently hit a coworker with it. Yes, it actually resulted in HR intervention. Another time, again, same colleague, made a joke about the Last Supper in our incredibly conservative, faith-based organization and with nuns present. Shockingly, that one didn't land. So, my friends, we know humor is an incredible communicative tool. We talked about how it can bring groups together and it can help to make tension dissolve. But like any communication endeavor, it can transition to harmful if not used appropriately. So, all right, friends, I know we've done a lot, and I have one final set of behaviors to consider. Those that can really harm group functioning. Certainly, some of the negative roles we just discussed can do that, but many of those we discussed above, these that stem from being a self-centered communicator, they're just indicators that someone is developing, that they don't quite have that awareness around them yet, or maybe that they lack confidence. The last roles that we're going to talk about, these tend to be more strategic, and they also tend to leave a larger radius of destruction. One, the blocker. A blocker may intentionally or inadvertently prevent work from being completed in a timely manner. Those who block might invoke a procedural rule or stall by seeking additional feedback from others. Those who unintentionally block progress might do so by missing deadlines, meetings, or other decision-making ventures. Sometimes employees will block because they lack the know-how or the ability to perform the role. Again, other times it is done in an attempt to sway decisions or project or outcomes to their preference. In addition to the blocker, we have the withdrawer. This individual intentionally avoids participating or engaging in group activities. Here, I'm not talking about folks who aren't going to happy hours or other things outside of work time. The withdrawer is an individual who isn't engaging when we're in meetings, when we're in discussions, when we're in ideation sessions. Chances of having a withdrawer on staff increases as your team gets larger. These employees tend to partake in group discussions and events only when required, and oftentimes only if a punishment is related if they don't attend or they aren't engaged. As a fellow introvert, I fully understand the need to warm up to situations before engaging, and that is not the withdrawer. The withdrawer isn't necessarily carrying his or her or their own weight. They are not engaged, kind of just bobbing along, often doing the bare minimum. Whereas the withdrawer, that one's kind of tough to say. I want you to say that out loud, tends to hurt the group by not adding their own unique ideas and opinions. The aggressor is a different story. An aggressor can dramatically alter the culture or feel of a work group because they communicate in ways that blocks others' ideas or communicate in a manner that leaves people feeling attacked or belittled. This role is especially damaging to group morale, should be addressed quickly and likely to human resources. Finally, our last role, the doormat. Not to be confused with an introvert, the doormat allows group members to dismiss their ideas, their suggestions, overlook their contributions to the detriment of the collective functioning of the group. When we have a doormat, this can send the message to others that they need to be fearful of speaking up because they too might be spoken over or dismissed. Not the message you want to send or be on the receiving end of. My friends, we have looked at task roles, those that help to foster supportive workplaces, and we've also considered negative behaviors, like those that tend to be negative but self-centered. And then we've also looked at those that are so negative, they tend to have a very large impact on the work group, and again, what it feels like to work in that particular group. So now that we've talked about the roles and we know that these different roles emerge within teams, I want us to end by considering the many advantages of cultivating strong team relationships and also a potential downfall as well. When we have a collection of positive leader-member dyadic relationships, when we have strong peer relationships, we tend to thrive as a team. We see ourselves as part of a collective and we tend to be committed to team success. In this case, we often enjoy, not just tolerate collaborating with others. We share in mutual trust and respect, and usually we are part of the sense of obligation. And the sense of obligation is among what helps us to stay committed to producing high-quality work and seeing projects through. What else do we see if we have a collection of strong relationships in our group? We tend to be happier with our jobs and we tend to perform them better while also remaining more committed to the organization. Hand in hand with organizational commitment, less turnover. And something that I really like, let's just say maybe you and your manager never hit it off. You got off on the wrong foot and it never really turned a corner. Well, if you have strong peer relationships and the team functions well as a group, you have some extra insulation from that so-so or negative relationship with your manager. It's pretty cool, right? So your teammates create a protective buffer that helps you to enjoy the work group and contribute in meaningful ways. Again, even if that relationship with your manager is, a bit challenging. Now, in addition to potentially serving as a buffer against a lower quality relationship with the manager, team member exchange is associated with more ideation, more innovation, and more creativity. These positive outcomes likely stem from the fact that when we have the strong dynamic, we have more supportive, more collegial behavior. They provide extra support, whether it's in the form of needing information or emotional support, providing additional helping behaviors, aiding when we have an especially big lift at work, and enhanced engagement. Folks, lots and lots of benefits here. The takeaway message is it is in everyone's best interest to cultivate strong peer and team relationships. Sure, it means we do better work and we're more innovative, but it also means we're happier too, that we're more engaged, and again, work just tends to feel a lot better then. One thing I want us to talk about, and I think it's really important we don't overlook this, there is one potential disadvantage of having really strong team relationships when that group becomes too similar. The academic term homophily, when our team again is too similar, when they think too much like you, and oftentimes when they look too much like you. Everyone has heard that adage, birds of a feather flock together. And this saying highlights an aspect of human nature that we all know. We tend to be drawn to people, to situations, to things that are similar. Promoting the sense of familiarity can also lead to liking. So we're mindful of this, but it can also propel managers to intentionally or unintentionally hire employees who are really similar to themselves or to others already in the work group. And that can limit the group's ability to offer innovative solutions and their ability to meet the needs of diverse groups and clients. Building a team where the majority of members are similar, especially at the exclusion of one or two employees, we're likely to see a lot more turnover. We're likely to see a lot more cracks in the group as members try to communicate to make sense of the differential treatment. It's important to remember that the leader is usually the driving force in shaping a group's culture. My formal leaders out there, I want you to think carefully about your team's values and consider how to structure your group based on its own value system. This includes using intentional, I want you to be inclusive with your communication, but also considering your employee experience. Also consider the experience of your clients and other external stakeholders. Some really simple questions you as a formal leader can ask yourself. Also, friends, if you are leading a project group or another group where you are the leader, or formally or informally, I want you to think about these questions as well. What does it mean to be a member of this team? What does it feel like to be a member of this team? What do our clients or stakeholders expect from us? What does it feel like to be our client or our stakeholder? Very simple questions, but they can help leaders consider if changes are necessary, maybe to processes or procedures to better align team goals with member and client and stakeholder experiences. Next week on The Communicative Leader, we dive into a 2-part series on leadership and self-care. All right, my friends, that wraps up our conversation today. Until next time, communicate with intention and lead with purpose. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again soon on The Communicative Leader.